I'm about to give you a comprehensive free tutorial on the features and operation of the Rane One MkII DJ controller, focusing mainly on the hardware functions. This is a gorgeous DJ controller, supremely well built, stunning in this white colour, and with incredibly authentic feeling motorised platters. It's got built-in hardware effects, it's got deep stems integration, and works wonderfully as a standalone mixer too. It's a true performance workhorse. A great choice for general DJing, for performance DJing, and for the most intricate scratch DJing as well. Now, if you're coming from another Rane model, or another hardware brand, or another type of DJ system, and you just need a quick reference guide to its features, check out the table of contents. You can hit Control or Command and F, depending on your computer, type in the keyword, and if we've got a chapter marker for it, it will be highlighted below. Hit the time code, and it will jump to that part of the video. Otherwise, just sit back and watch for the full explainer. There's a lot of cool stuff here. Now, for those of you who are pure beginners or intermediate DJs, a word of warning though, this video alone is not going to be enough for you to play great DJ sets with your controller. There are many skill sets and pieces of knowledge that you have to be able to combine to crush it as a DJ. So I can teach you about this piece of gear, but if you don't understand the rest of the gear you'll need, or how to find and organize music, or the basics of counting and timing and beat mixing, or the skills of programming and performing a DJ set, or indeed how to successfully get booked to play at parties, how to live stream, how to make DJ mixes and things of that nature, you're going to be frustrated. When I got started back in 1992, we didn't have YouTube. We had to learn by trial and error. I learned on cheap turntables and a crappy Gemini mixer, and it took me years of frustration before I got good. I remember nearly giving up several times, but I didn't. I stuck with it. DJing became my career, and it's brought me decades of joy. And so I make you that promise. Yes, if you're new to this, you are going to run into some frustrations, but my job is to get you through them. The teaching style that we use here at Digital DJ Tips is to focus on the end result, on actually getting you quickly playing real DJ sets. That's where the magic happens. That's where the real learning happens. It's not in your bedroom. It's not practicing at home, it's DJ sets that other people can enjoy. Now, if you like what you see here, I've got two extra resources for you. Now, firstly, we have a crash course for beginners called the Complete DJ Course, where I teach you all you need to know to DJ like a pro fast. Any music, any style. Even better, it works not only with the Rane One MkII, but for all DJ gear. Once you follow the course, you'll not only be a great DJ, but you'll be able to play confidently in public on any DJ system. It's about an 80 lesson course at last count, it kind of keeps growing, and you get access to me personally as your tutor, making it a phenomenal investment in your DJing. I'll put a link in the description underneath so you can check out the info page about that. Now, another great resource is our global best-selling book on how to DJ, Rock the Dance Floor, which is now in its second edition and is a fantastic primer on the big 5 areas of DJing: gear, music, mixing, performing, and success. This book has helped tens of thousands of DJs to get started. Again, there's a link in the description, but I'll also tell you how you can get a free copy of this book later on. So we've got a tremendous amount of information to cover, so let's get started. The first thing you need to do is assemble the platters and the vinyl. Now, I've already done this one. This one still has to be done. The reason it comes supplied like this is to protect the motor in transit. Now, the disc here that I'm turning by hand is what turns when you hit the play button. And this is what turns the platter that comes with the unit. In order to do that, you need to line up these 2 holes with these 2 pins. Get those 2 things working, grab it like this, drop it on top, and line them up. That's now going to turn around when I press the button. There's your motor control. So in order to control the music itself, we need to also connect up to the spindle in the middle, because actually it's the spindle in the middle going around that controls the music, controls the waveform, and that controls what you hear. I'm turning this by hand now. Look at the waveform on the computer software, right? So that's going round because I'm doing that. It's nothing to do with the platter. The platter's not going round. I haven't got the motor pressed. If the motor was pressed and I was holding this to stop anything happening, then the waveform would not be going around, right? So we need to connect our vinyl that comes with it. This is the vinyl that comes with it, we need to connect this to the spindle so we get accurate control of the music. So here's how you do that. Pop your slip mat on top. You can put the plastic discs underneath if you want to make it looser. And this part here comes with a little spring-loaded pin here. And this spring-loaded pin controls a tiny little piece of plastic in the middle of the spindle hole. You line this up with the spindle itself, put it on, and then you turn this until you hear a click. So listen very carefully as I turn this. There you go, you hear that? That click was the spindle taking that pin and clicking into place. And that now means that this is controlling the movement of that spindle in the middle. Whether or not you've got the motor underneath going around, which is essentially just there for feel, what I'm doing is what you can see controlling that waveform, right? And if I take my hand off of there, then it will just play away as if I wasn't doing anything. As soon as I grab it, that stops, right? So there is your vinyl control, and that's how it relates to the motor that's powering underneath. Get those two put together and we're ready to move on to getting the software in place. In order to get your unit working, you need two things. You need the DJ software, Serato DJ Pro, but you also need the driver for both Windows and Mac. So let's go and get the driver now. When you first plug it in, chances are it's going to ask you to do this, but I'll show you how to do it manually so you can be sure that you've got it right. So on the Rane downloads page at rane.com/downloads, you're going to scroll down to find the Rane One MkII and the drivers for your operating system. So the Mac drivers in my case, click on download and they'll come down and they'll look like this. So I'm going to open them and I'm going to double click on the Rane One MkII and guide through the setup procedure here. Once you've done all that, you don't need to do anything else. It's all set up on your system and it will work. It'll kick in when you need it. But you do need the DJ software. Did you notice also on this page here, there is a download for the user guide. You get the quick start guide in your box, but it's definitely worth downloading the full user guide because you've got an expensive unit here. It does lots of stuff. It's a reference after I've shown you to come back and remember about all of it. Right, Serato, click on the Serato link. It'll take you to their website. If you haven't got an account, you need to register for one. Click download, grab Serato DJ Pro, the latest version for your operating system. It should automatically guess whether you're on a Mac or on a PC and get that installed. When you first launch the Serato software, assuming you've got your USB plugged in, you're going to see this at the bottom of the screen. It'll tell you it's connecting. And when that goes away, you're ready to go. You've got control over the decks. However, we do need to plug a few more things in order to be able to control the unit and also to add any extra gear we might have. So let's head around the back of the unit now, take a close look at all those plugs in there for inputs and outputs. I'll talk you through them from left to right. Firstly, I'm not going to patronise you by telling you to plug the power in and press the on button at the back, but once you've done that, starting on the left, two microphone inputs. They'll take a microphone jack, a 1/4 inch jack, or an XLR. Then we've got an auxiliary input for plugging in something like a phone, for instance, or anything else that you want to plug in and just play through the unit independently of the computer. This is where we plug our decks in. So these two RCA pairs here are for plugging in to turntables if you have these set to phono for turntable, or for instance CDJs if you have them set to line. You have to have those set correctly. You've also got a pin here for plugging the earth leads in, the third earth lead that comes, for instance, with a Technics turntable. And if you have the Serato DVS pack, which doesn't come with the unit, you can control Serato software with turntables that are plugged in here as well, but that's an extra purchase. Here then are our outputs. This is the one you'll probably use most. This is the RCA output for just plugging in main speakers if you're DJing at home or whatever. You also have the professional XLR outputs for the same, but then you have the booth outputs. These are separate outputs with a separate volume control for plugging in a second set of speakers to traditionally in the DJ booth, hence the name. So we've already met one of these inputs here, which is where we plug in our control cable from the computer, but you also have another one so you can play with two laptops, swap over from DJ to DJ and so on. And this little button here, motor torque, is for deciding how tight the motors feel, how strong the motor is. In other words, how much you have to do to stop the motor turning when you push down on here. That's just a personal taste. Certainly if you're a scratch DJ turntablist, you're going to want to press that button and see which one works best for you. Looking at the front of the unit, they're mainly controls to do with the inputs and outputs that we just looked at, but there's a few more things here as well. These are where we control the input, volume, and also EQ, low and high, for the two microphones we just looked at. There is an on-off switch for the first microphone, a tiny little switch there. The second microphone has on-off and auxiliary, because the auxiliary input we looked at on the back shares the controls with the second microphone. It's an either or on that one. This is a sampler volume for the software sampler. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Then we have some controls which relate to the faders, the crossfader and the up faders. The first set of controls then are these ones here, which decide how much the up faders take to kick in, how long they take to kick in and cut out. So for scratching, you can set these to smooth or quite sharp. That's what the knob does in the middle. And these two buttons here reverse them. So instead of being off when they're down, they're on when they're down, and they're off when they're up, hamster mode. Same here for the crossfader. So the crossfader has the same control there for smooth or sharp cutting, and also hamster mode or reverse mode. And finally, all the headphone controls are on the front as well. You've got the headphones 1/4 and 1/8 inch sockets there, so you can plug in whatever size plug you've got. There's your headphone volume. You've also got a split Q, which puts the master volume through one of your ear cups and the Q volume through the other one, and there is the Q mix if you want to do it that way, which decides how much of the cued music and how much of the master music you're hearing when you play. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that when we look at the controls on the top panel, which is what we're going to move on to now. We're going to spend the most of the rest of this tutorial looking at the top panel of this unit because there's an awful lot there to get through. Let's get started. So the best way to break down a unit like this is to look at the individual functions one by one. Even though they're all crammed in together, we can break it down and make it a lot simpler. So we're going to start with the mixer, which is a bit down the middle. However, the mixer has a big chunk in the middle here, which is actually nothing to do with the mixer. This is the effects. And so if we take this chunk here out, what we're left with is reasonably simple. We have two channels and we have the faders to control those channels. So let's look at them one by one. So the channels have these selectors at the top. The A and B refer to the A and B around the back here. So if you've got a computer plugged into A, then you're going to want to have these set to A. The one in the middle that says deck 1 and deck 2 and line is for when you have something plugged in round here in the turntable or CDJ external plugs. So usually when you've got something plugged in there, you'll have these set to line and you'll literally be listening through there. However, if you've got digital vinyl plugged in the back, you'll have these set to the computer that you're controlling the digital vinyl with. Okay, so that's what they're for. Now, moving down a little bit to these two controls here. These are the input level, the gain controls. These decide how loud whatever it is that's coming into this channel is before anything else has happened to it. In other words, this is for balancing the channels so that they're roughly the same volume from the very beginning when you're mixing with them, so you don't get surprises when you move from one to the other. They have a helpful little meter here. I'm just going to hit play on this deck slightly off camera, and you can see that this is moving and showing me that this is where the input is set. Now we can't hear this at the moment because I've got everything else turned down, but you're going to want this set so it's definitely not in the red like that, but it's somewhere close. About 11 o'clock is normally right. And the idea is that when you've got something playing on the other deck, you balance these visually so you know that when you put the fader up, as I'm going to do now, if I were to put that one up too with something playing there, as long as these are balanced in the first place, then they're not going to be too far apart volume-wise. Okay, so now let's move down and look at these controls here. These are our EQs. These are full kill EQs, and that means that they control the low, mid and high frequencies. All the way to the left is completely off. So if I turn them all to the left, we completely lose the channel entirely. It's now utterly gone. And I can move them to the right to bring that frequency range back in. Obviously I can move past the top there to make them louder than they are in the middle, which is set to neutral or to 0. So now that these are set somewhere where I want them, I move down further to this section here, where I get to control, having got all this how I want it, the volume in the mix of this particular track. Again, this is what this is for. The crossfader will mix between these two sources. I'm going to hit play on this one now. Controlled by the controller on the front we looked at a second ago, which decides how quickly this moves from one to the other or how smoothly. Now, this unit has got baked into it stems. Stems is where you can control the individual parts of the track separately from each other, drums, melodies and vocals. It's extremely powerful, and one place where you can control it is with these. In order to kick that in, you hold down the shift button and you press the Q button for the channel that you want. So if I want to control the vocals, melodies and drums separately on this channel, I'll hold down shift and tap that button there. That will start flashing when I'm holding down the shift button to show me that that's what I'm set to. So now I've got drums, melody and vocals separated here rather than low, mid and high frequencies. So we'll listen to that. There's one headphones control you haven't seen yet. When we looked at the front of the unit and I pointed them all out, it's probably the most important one, and that's because it's right here on the top. It's this button here, the Q button. If you don't hold down shift in order to change the low, mid and high to controlling the stems, then this will do its main function, which is to decide which channel you're hearing through your headphones. This is listening to the left-hand channel, this is listening to the right-hand channel. Press them both together. If you want to do that, then you can hear both channels together. This is therefore how you listen to something the audience isn't hearing. Now, there's another set of meters we haven't looked at, these ones here. If I turn the music back up, you can see as I turn the main volume up here, this is the main volume, these go up. Again, we want to keep these out of the red, just like we're keeping this one out of the red. Push these up to the red and you'll start distorting the music. You also have the booth volume control here. This controls what comes out of the booth sockets on the back, just like what I just pressed. It controls what comes out of the main. So you've got main and booth levels on the top here. We're controlling those two separately. Now, before we move on to look at the decks, you might have noticed on the front of the unit is the wording tension adjustable. So I've taken out the little screws from these 4 holes here using a tiny screwdriver. And now I'm going to take off the caps. Now, the easiest way to do that, I find, is a flat-headed screwdriver, very, very gently so you don't disturb the paintwork. Pop that under there and just push up and that will come off easily. So do that for all of them. Works with the knobs as well. Again, be very gentle. And so once you've got those off and you've got the 4 screws out here, you can take off the whole top panel like this. And if you remove the top panel, again, I'm just going to pop that in there, lift it like that, then you'll see that the crossfader and the up faders have got these little screws here. Now, these little screws are magnetic, and the poles that the faders move up and down on are metal. So that means that if you adjust this screw so that the other end of it, the bit that's near to the pole, is further away from the pole than it is as standard, by putting a few turns on it anti-clockwise, you're going to get a much smoother feel, a lighter feel to the up faders. So if you want these to be lighter, let's just do the other one the same. You don't want these to have quite as much tension on them. And again, with the crossfader, the same thing. Then that's where you do it. You take them off and adjust them, and the whole crossfader itself will come out as well for replacement there too. All right, let's go and look at the decks now. The decks are identical, so this is what the deck area is referring to. So in the middle, as we've already seen, we have this high torque motor. Just worth pointing out, by the way, that if you've got this going round, the way to stop the music playing is to touch gently on here so that this stops. We've already talked through this, the way it's assembled and the way it works. What you don't want to do is what you might think if you've never used motorized platters or turntables before. What you don't want to do is touch the edge and stop it like this, because now the high torque motor underneath is pulling away and it can't do anything. So it's just going to overheat and wear out and all that stuff. So it's okay to do that every now and then for a second, but don't hold it like this as a rule. You know, this is the way that you do it, just in case you've never seen that before. Also, while we're talking about this, you can actually replace this, take the screws out, get any old vinyl that you want. You can make your own, just as long as you assemble this and put 3 holes in the middle and screw this on top. So if you want to change the vinyl, hey, go ahead and change the vinyl. Put what you want on here. Right, let's start talking through some of the controls here. So we're going to need to look at the top first because you need to load a track onto the deck, right? So in the software, the library you can see in the middle there, you see we're moving up and down through the library to choose a track. The way I'm doing that is by moving this knob here up left and right? So clockwise and anti-clockwise. Pressing down on it will load the track that you have chosen. So click there and it loads, as you saw that loaded onto the left hand deck there. Now you can move backwards and forwards, so in other words from the tracks that you're browsing to the left hand part of the screen by pressing this button here. And by doing that then I'll move to choose something from the left. So in this case I can choose from Spotify, Stems or All, and pressing it again will go back into whatever it is that you're looking at. So if you want to quickly load onto the left hand deck in this instance, what you've already got playing on the right hand deck, then you can do that. And the way you do that is by just double tapping this button here. This is called instant doubles and it can be really useful. So for instance, let's just get a track playing over here. Just started a track playing. Right, so I'm going to double tap this and then I'm going to go back to the software, watch what happens. Two versions of the track playing together. Both decks are going round. Crossfader is moving between the two of them. And this is a great tool if you want to then start scratching with one of them or doing something special. Instant doubles is one of those things that is very, very easy on digital gear. You don't need to own 2 copies of the record at all in order to do it. Now, if you want to add a track to what is called in Serato the prepare crate, then you do that by holding down Shift and clicking on there. And there's a special window in the software where you can quickly go through your collection and add, say, half a dozen songs that you want to play next. So that's how you access that. Right, while we're up here, let's talk about this button here. It's Censor or Silent Cue. It will play the track momentarily backwards just for how long you've got your finger on it, like this. Notice that the deck itself doesn't go backwards, just the audio that you're hearing. And the reason that's useful is for usually getting rid of curse words, because it'll play the track backwards, the curse word will never play, and the track will carry on where it would have been had you not pressed that button. And so you can also go into full reverse up here by holding down Shift and pressing that button, and then the deck actually, interestingly, will go backwards. Unsurprisingly, doing it again will put it back. So there's another function here called Silent Cue. We'll move on to look at that in a minute. Now, you notice that when I pressed this Censor button, it played the track backwards only for as long as I was pressing it. There's another function called Slip, which will do the same thing, but you can do anything you want with the track while it's pressed. And again, when you finish whatever you're doing, it will carry on where it would have been. So this can be useful if you want to put a few scratches in and make the track sound a little bit more fun without losing where you are. You notice that as I'm messing around here, the track's staying in time with itself, if you like. So using Slip is the way to do that. However, do make sure that you turn it off again afterwards. Otherwise, it's going to confuse the hell out of you. Trust me on that one. And if you want the motor to be off on the turntable entirely, holding down Shift and pressing motor, the motor's now off, but the track's still playing. Did you notice then that when I press stop, the track stopped, kind of like sounded like vinyl? It didn't just stop dead. That's because there's a control that lets you do that, and it's really nice to have. This is the control, the stop time. I like to have it set about where you saw it there, just a little bit up, and that'll give you that same sound that we heard a second ago. If you have it all the way off, it still kind of sounds a bit vinyl-y, but basically it stops instantly. She plays backwards for a tiny bit. Hey, it's the turntable doing its thing. But if you put it up here, it's that kind of classic vinyl stop that you used to be able to get by turning off, literally turning the power off on a Technics turntable. And all the way up is even more extreme. Now, talking about extreme, This control here changes the tempo, but also changes the key or the pitch. This is why these are generally called pitch faders. And strangely, when you push it up, it puts the pitch and tempo down. When you pull it towards you or down, it pushes the pitch and tempo up. It's just the way it is. So you can adjust lots of things about this. For instance, this button here, repeatedly pressing it will cycle through how much these change when you go up and down, from 50% all the way down to 8%, which can make a big difference. Let's have a listen. There's just a couple of the variations there. So did you notice that the pitch of the track didn't go up or down as the tempo did? That's because keylock is on. If I hold down shift and press this button, that turns keylock off. This little symbol here is now not lit up in blue. If I turn it off camera on again, you see it lights up in blue, and I press it off again, it goes off again. Now we will have the kind of classic turntable sound when I slow this down, and because we can set it to something quite a big range, and again you can see this in the software, the range as I press that button changes here. As we've got quite a big range set now to plus or minus 50%, you're really going to hear this. And again with the keylock on. DJs love this keylock because it allows you to move the track further away from where it was originally recorded and keep the pitch where it was originally made as well. So it makes it more creative. You can basically get away with more. You can use more pitch shifts than you would with vinyl without it starting to sound completely mad. And so as a creative tool, that's quite a good one to know. Okay then, one of the things about motorized turntables is it's actually a little bit harder to do the nudge thing. With controllers that have got fixed platters, it's quite easy to just touch the edge in order to keep things in time with each other. And strangely, it's harder with motorized turntables. However, these buttons here help you, because these buttons here at the bottom, the pitch bend buttons, will slow down or speed up the turntable just momentarily, and you don't have to touch it at all. And they'll do it progressively, so the longer you keep your finger on it, the more it will move that track slowly or fast. But the thing is, when you take your finger off, it will return to the tempo it was originally at. And this can be useful if you are manually beat mixing and one track is just a little bit ahead or a little bit behind the other track. So another thing that these buttons down here are useful for is changing the speed of the platter here. So this is currently going round at that speed. So it's literally like the old-fashioned 33, 45 buttons on a record deck. If you want to choose a default, i.e. I always want my decks to go around at 33 or 45 and not have it sound fast or slow, then in the Serato software you can choose what you want the virtual deck speed to be as a rule, and then the other one becomes your performance tool or whatever you want to use it for. Right. Next, we're going to look at one or two of the basic features that we haven't looked at so far on the decks. Then we'll move up and look at the effects, then we'll move on to the pads, and we're going to end off by looking at all the things you can change on the hardware itself that will alter the way it behaves independently or in conjunction with the software. Talking of the software, I want to get it up right now because the first thing I show you is going to be something that lets you set and change a temporary cue point on a track on a waveform on the software. So at the top of the screen here, we've got Serato, and on the left-hand deck, I have this track here loaded. Now this track begins like this. Now let's say I wanted to start that track playing, not from that little intro, not from that bit, but from that kick drum right there. So I've lined it up at that kick drum, and I can just press this cue button here. It's flashing now, which means it's not been set, but as soon as I press it, it's now set. It's not flashing anymore. And on the screen, we now have a couple of arrows showing that that's where the temporary cue point is set on that track. Now I can play from there. If I want to get back to there though, I can just press the temporary cue point again. And I'm back there. And now I can press play again. Press it again, back there. Press play again. Now, if I want to If I want to set a new temporary cue point somewhere else on this track, then that's easy. When the track's paused, I just set it where I want it. So say I want it there, on that beat there, press it again. Now it's moved to there. The arrows have moved to there. The track is now going to play from there, not from the beginning. And it's jumping back to that one. And again, set a new one. I want to set a new one there, press it. That's why it's called a temporary cue point, because it's temporary. It'll only last as long as you don't press it again with the track paused somewhere else. Very useful for just grabbing somewhere on a track that you want to stutter in. Stuttering is when you do this. And you can do this keeping your finger on it to keep the track playing for as long as you want. As soon as you take your finger off though, it stops. Now, if you're stuttering, if you're messing around like this, but then you want the track to actually play, then you press the start, stop button while you've got your finger on this. So I'll use two hands to do this. You'd normally probably just do it with your thumb. So this is my second finger, watch it on this one here. Now I could take both hands off. As soon as I press play, it'll just carry on playing. Now, if I want to get back to the very beginning of the track, there's a special feature using the shift button here and the Q button. If I hold down shift and press Q, it will always jump to the beginning of the track like this. And if I keep pressing shift and Q, it will actually jump to the previous track and the previous track and the previous track in the playlist. See, it's loading all those different tracks. You can see all the tracks above the one I was playing into the night that are now filled in Control, Feel Love and Fallout. They're the tracks that it's just loaded and played because I kept pressing the back button there. That's what this little symbol means underneath it, this little back symbol. It's saying that when I hold down shift and press this, instead of getting Q, I will get the back function. You've seen me use shift before, and everything written underneath the button is what shift will do. So when I turn the motor on and off by pressing shift, you'll see it says motor under there. So the sync button, now you know that, you're going to understand exactly what this does without me even explaining it. Pressing sync will sync this track to the one playing on the other deck. Holding down shift and pressing sync will turn that sync function off, so it's no longer synced to the other deck. These are the loop controls. The looping is to the beat, not in seconds. So you can set auto loops based upon the number of beats and bars in the track really easily with this. Again, that has set a 4-beat loop because the software has got a 4-beat loop set. I can press it again to turn that loop off. If I want to return to that loop, I press the shift button and press this button here, which gives me what's called reloop. It'll take me back to that loop and trigger it again. And you can see on the screen, the loop is shown clearly on the waveform as well. If I want to halve or double the length of the loop, then I can use these half and double buttons here. Now, if I want to set a loop manually, I can use shift and press these two buttons here. So shift and this one is loop in and shift and this one is loop out. So if I want to set a loop completely to my specifications, this is how I would do it. We'll come back to the decks to look at a few more of the bits and pieces there, not least the pads and all the stuff you can do on those in a while, because now I want to return to the mixer and specifically to this part in the middle of the mixer where all the effects are. We're going to start off by looking at the main effects section here. We'll leave the channel effects for a little bit later, but now we're going to look at the main effects, which are dominated by this screen here. So these are hardware effects. These are effects built into the unit you can use with anything. And so you need a way of seeing how they're set. And this is how we do it. This screen is actually useful when we're tweaking some of the settings of the controller overall. But again, we'll talk about that in a little while. So what have we got on the screen here then? Well, it shows some parameters of the currently selected effect. So here we see in the middle, this half is telling you that the effect will cycle every half a beat. Then we've got at the bottom here, high pass filter or HPF cut and a frequency. So this is one of the parameters, and you won't be surprised to hear, I'll show you in a minute, this knob here that says parameter on it is how we change that. So this is telling us some things about the currently selected effect. So when you select an effect, I'm going to click through these 6 buttons here, you can see that the name of the effect is coming up on that screen. And you can also see that we get a different parameter on each effect depending upon what the effect has and what is currently selected. So that's what goes on with these buttons here. These are selecting 6 effects. Now there's more than 6 effects. I'll show you how you can choose which ones you want on these buttons if you don't want the 6 which are by default in a second's time. So what else have we got on here? Well, left and right, you see left we have 115 and right we have 100. These are the BPMs of the currently loaded tracks on the decks. You can see on the Serato software there, we've got 115 and 100. So these are telling you where we're at with the currently selected effect and what this half refers to, right? What BPM this half a beat refers to. This is a scratch controller. This is designed for scratch, for performance. And so it's got the classic paddles. These are really, really nice to feel, to touch, to use. They're nicely damped. They're just a great control. And they're literally center of the whole controller. So you can see when I pull it down, that's turning on the effect that's set here for the right-hand deck. And that's turning it on for the left-hand deck. Notice that we get that flashing light there telling us it's on. But when I take my finger off it, it's off again. If I push it up, then it locks it for that deck. Only one effect, right? So you only get one effect. You can't set one for the left and one for the right deck. Just only one effect can be set. And then this decides whether it's locked on or momentarily on. So you can choose how you engage it that way. This knob here is the effect depth or the dry wet knob. Turn it all the way to the left. You won't get any of the effects no matter what you do here. Turn it to the middle, you get exactly half of the dry and half of the wet, or half of the unaffected and half of the affected sound. Turn it all the way there and you get just the affected sound. Back to the screen then and the parameter knob. Turn this knob here and look at the high pass cut parameter. You'll see that it's changing. This is how we alter the currently set parameter on our currently selected effect. If you push the button, it will move to a different parameter if there's more than one parameter, and it will cycle through them. There's 2 parameters on this. So if I want to change the feedback, which on the case of the echo here is the amount of echo you get before it finally fades out, then this is how I do that, switching to it there. Now these BPMs here can be adjusted manually, and the way you do that is holding down the shift button and turning the parameter button. So if I hold down shift and turn parameter, you'll see this number here, this 115 here, will turn slowly up by 1/10 of a BPM each time. So this is if you want to do special things, you want to move away from the BPM that's currently set for whatever creative reason you have, that's how you do it. So what if you don't like one of the effects that are there predetermined and you want to swap it for something else? Then you hold down the button for the effect you don't like and turn the parameter knob like this. So if I don't like the recycler, I can hold that down, turn parameter, and now it's going to go through all the other effects that are available to me, and I can click the button to choose the one that I want instead. So we're just going to swap it for a flanger now. There we go. So this button now, when I press this, is going to be a flanger instead. The little joystick here has got 2 uses. One is to move backwards and forwards between the 2 decks BPMs. So it's currently underlined at 112. That means we're on that one. I press it to the right, it goes to this one. And that's when you want to adjust it manually using the parameter knob, like I showed you earlier. That chooses the deck that you do that to. But the most important use by far is moving this up and down like this, because that halves or doubles that number in the middle, and therefore halves or doubles how quickly the effect cycles. That's by far the most obvious and the most common use of that. That said, if you press and hold shift and then move this joystick left or right, it will take the BPM on the currently underlined or selected deck and move it to the other deck like that. So I'm going to hold down shift now and do this. You'll see that it's now set this deck to 112 BPM as well. Can be quite useful for when you're setting a echo out and you quickly want the echo out to echo out at the tempo of the other deck when you're mixing open format with 2 different BPMs, because it will make a smoother transition. It's a very, very simple way of doing that there, which is a lot easier than on nearly all other DJ systems that I can think of. And finally, if you do want to use the software effects in Serato, clicking this will move on to the software effects, and these controls will now affect the software section of the Serato software, and so you've got that option there as well if you want it. This isn't a Serato tutorial though. If you do want to become a Serato ninja, and I seriously suggest that you do if you're going to DJ professionally with this software, then come and have a look at our Serato Made Easy course over at digitaldjtips.com. Okay, So if I hold down the shift button here, and at the same time, while that's held down, I tap on this button here, which says tap, that's the shift function for it. It will change the BPM here to whatever speed I tap. So if I tap a slow BPM, I just tapped an 88-ish BPM. If I tap a very fast one, I tap to 170 BPM. And so that means the effects on this side, on this deck, will cycle at the speed that I tapped in, not at the one that's been auto taken from the software. And if you want to return that to auto, you just hold that down for 3 seconds or so, and then it returns to 116.3, which is the one I've currently got set in the software. This can be useful when you want to match the tempo that your effects are going at with something that's coming in from somewhere else, like a record deck or something. It's just a very quick way of getting those lined up without having to rely on anything software based. We might as well cover off what else is on that button then as well while we're here. So this is the microphone 1 effects on. The microphone 1, not all the microphones, just microphone 1, has got reverb and also echo. So if I press the microphone 1 effects on, you can see we've got echo lit up here. I'll just turn it off again and on again so you can see, there you go, mic FX1 echo. And so there's a depth there. And if I hold down the button again and turn the parameter, you can see the depth, which is the amount of echo, is going up and down. So you can not only have the echo, but you can tune it. Now, a lot of people prefer reverb. That's fine. While the button's held down, you just use the joystick to move up. You get 2, echo and reverb. So now we've got reverb, and again, I can adjust the depth of the reverb. So this is useful if you've got an MC or a singer playing with you and you want them to be able to perform over the top of your music, for instance. Well, it's the way of dialing in not only the reverb or the echo, but also the depth of those things. So these 2 knobs here, traditionally on DJ mixers, are a filter, and they have a click in the middle where nothing's happening. You move it away to the left or right and you get 2 different variations of the filter, which is the classic that they have on this. And that's what's on this. If you have this not plugged into your DJ gear at all, if you've just got it plugged in with some record decks or whatever, that will be a filter. And I'll show you what it sounds like in a minute. But if you have it plugged into your software, which you will have most of the time, you get more choices. Just bear that in mind. If you have the software unplugged, that will only be a filter. All right then, so let's have a look at what you do have then when you're plugged in. So we've got this button here, which turns it on and off. That's important. This won't do anything until it's turned on here. So turning it on there will tell us that we've got the filter currently selected. I'll turn it off again, turn it on there. Filter currently selected. You can only have 1 effect on both channels. You can't select a different one for each channel. It's just 1 for both. So I'll just go back to this one here. So I've got a track loaded on this deck. I will start that track playing. So that's a low pass filter. It's taken all but the lowest frequencies out. And now it's taken all but the very highest frequencies out. Now, if you want to change the effect, you don't want the filter, you hold down Shift and press either of the channel effects buttons. It doesn't matter, it will change it for both of them. So now we're on a filter roll, which is a different kind of filter sound. So listen to that one. And you saw there, you can either go back to the middle to turn it off, or you can just press the off button. Either way, you will kill the effect where you want to. Let's have a listen to another one then. I'll move on to the noise effect. And then finally, let's move on to the flanger, which is a flangey, phasey kind of, well, you'll hear it. Just again, remember with these, you only get the same effect on both when it's selected, and you have to make sure you turn it on or you won't hear it, and you'll only get the filter if you haven't got the software plugged in. Okay, let's have a listen to some of those main hardware effects then. I'm going to go through the 6 ones that are set by default: the echo, the recycler, the scale down, the reverb, the matrix, and the echo out. Our full review of this unit, I do go into more detail about these, so if you want to look at a bit more depth in how they sound, then go and look at that. But for now, we'll just quickly go through these 6. So echo is, as you would imagine, an echo effect, giving us that classic echo sound. That's set to 3/4 of a beat there, but I could set that to a 1 beat echo, which gives us a different feeling. And the other one people tend to use a lot is a 1/2 beat echo like this. Now notice that even with the fader down, you can still hear it, and that's because they're post-fader effects, which means it happens after the fader, and just trust me, that is what you want. Okay, recycler sounds like this. So there's an example of how the effects depth can really help you to dial in an effect. The recycler is, by its definition, quite a long sounding echo. And by using the effects depth there, I could basically make it go on forever to give me a really nice sound, a really good little way of maybe getting a track out of the mix while you mix another one in. So scale down is what you would imagine. So think about what a scale down might sound like on a track. That's what we get with this one. Now I want to draw your attention to this. It says scale major, and that was the actual musical scale that we heard there when I turned that effect on. It went down a note at a time following the major scale. And you can change this. This is one of the parameters you can change. There's loads of different scales in there. So if you're musically minded, you can have a lot of fun dialing in different types of scale there to get a different feel when you use the effect that I just dialed in. So we're going to move back to the reverb here. This is a classic effect for getting a track out of the mix or just adding something to an acapella or whatever. It sounds like this. You can hear that kind of big room feel there, right? And the FX depth will help you with that. The reverb has the decay length, the time it takes for the reverb to disappear from the mix. So you can control the volume as I was doing there with the effects depth, but you can also control kind of its length. And also you can control the high pass filter cut. And that's, you've probably seen that quite a lot on these. And this basically takes the very low frequencies out of the audio that you're applying the effects to, and generally gives you a cleaner sounding effect. Let's have a listen to the matrix effect now then. So that one was an interesting one because it just kind of like plays with some of the audio by repeating it and kind of almost randomly reflecting it around. But then in the end, it cuts the track out, right? So here we've got length, because you can decide how long it takes for that whole thing to happen. So if I set it to length 1, that's going to happen very quickly. And obviously if I set it to a much higher, length 9, it's going to take a long time. Quite an interesting way, I would say, to end a DJ set there. Right, so echo out is a variation of echo. This just gives you, without you having to actually stop the music or pull the fader down, the echo out effect. And I was doing it naturally on echo because I think echo tends to sound better when you stop the thing that you've echoed, but this will do it all on one knob. So finally, what if you want to record some of your changes? What if you've got an effect that you really like an echo out? It's a 3/4 echo out. You set the other parameters to how you want them to be, but you know that as soon as you turn the unit off, you're going to lose all those changes. And so the effect is going to be set back to the stock effect when you next use it. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just save your favorite presets so that when you turn the unit on, the effects are set how you want them to be? You can, and the way you do that is just by holding down the effect that you've changed something on. So if I change the parameters on this particular effect and I held this down, keep an eye on the screen while I do that, screen finally says FX saved, and I've now saved onto this the parameters on the effect that is set on that button. So an easy way of achieving that. So one of the good things about this unit is the way they've baked through the real-time stems control. So again, real-time stems, we saw it earlier on when I was showing you the EQs. Instead of having low, mid and high, you can have drums, melody and vocals, and you can balance them to different volumes using the EQs as we looked at. But right next to them are these. And so these controls here are very, very simple ways of getting an acapella and an instrumental, but they've got a little trick up their sleeve. So before we move on and look at the pads, we're going to spend a lot of time on the pads where we'll also find some stems functions. I just want to talk you through these. So let's get some music playing on this deck. All right then, so instant acapella. And you won't be surprised to know that this is an instant instrumental. However, if you hold down the shift button and press them, then it applies a stem effect to the other one. So if I hold down the shift and press this one here, it will apply a special effect to everything other than the acapella to give me a really nice way of getting to just the acapella. Listen to this. So it's like an echo out, but on everything apart from the acapella, right? Now the other one does the opposite. It's like an echo out on everything well, let's have a listen. Instant dub mix, eh? But you can do a lot more than just that. And when it comes to doing more with the music, we tend to need to use the pads. So I'm going to spend most of the time for the rest of this video looking at what we can do on the pads. Pad mode here and here for each deck, and also a secondary pad mode here and here for each deck. So let's zoom in on one of them. Let's get this track playing on here and I'll show you how the hot cues work. So the track's now playing right from the very start, bit of silence. And then the track kicks in, right? Pretty standard that, to have a bit of silence at the beginning of an MP3 and then a bit of an intro and then we're off, right? So let's have another listen right from the start. Right, I've got my temporary cue point set at the start. Remember I was teaching you how to do that earlier on in the lesson? The trouble with the temporary cue point is that it's temporary. What if I wanted to set a permanent cue point right at the start, which means that every time I load the track, every time, even when I've rebooted the software and even if I unplug the controller, it will always be there. I don't think it's about there we want it. Well, we're just going to hit this hot cue button here to set hot cue mode and then press this button here to set the first hot cue. Notice it came up in the software as well, same color, which is nice. So that hot cue is now on that point. Now, what if I want one on that first beat? There. I get to the first beat and press another one. I've now got one set on the first beat. What if I want one a bit further on? If I want to carry on playing, by the way, when I've held down a hot cue, again, just as with the temporary cue, you just press the start-stop button. Let's set another one here. So again, I've now got it set in the software. You can see all three of them in the software, the same colors that they are down here. Set another one. Okay, 4 hot cues. I can now jump between them at will. Notice that when the track's actually playing, the hot cue will play when you jump to it. It will only not play when you jump to it if the track was paused when you pressed it. You can put hot cues anywhere in your track, at the beginning of the breakdowns, at the end of the breakdowns, at the end of the whole song, so that you know you've got somewhere there that you can mix out from. You can use hot cues as markers on the software because their markers are down there on the waveform. So you can literally use them to show you places in the track that are important to you. They're very useful. However, all that said, if you want to get rid of them, you hold down the shift button and you press the one you want to get rid of like this, and they will disappear. Now I have a track with no hot cues in at all. Just like it's useful to save cue points, it can be useful to save loops as well, and that's what the next pad function will do. So press save loop to get into this mode. We have some loop slots here which are currently empty. Let's set a loop. We're going to use the usual loop controls that we've already met to set a loop. I'm waiting for a bit that sounds like it would be a good loop. There we go, I've got a nice clean loop that I could use in my mixing there. So if I turn the loop off now, I can get back to it. You'll remember that I hold down shift and press loop again to call the reloop function, which will get me back to it. The trouble is, if I set another loop further on in the track, I won't be able to get back to it because the new loop will replace the old one and I've lost it forever. So if I want to keep that loop, that one we just came up with, I need to save it on a slot. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to press one of these empty slots. Let's press that one there. So that loop is now saved into this slot. I can record this loop at any point simply by pressing that. Now it will not jump to that point in the track when you press that. And the reason for that is, if you think about it, logical. You can have loops set at different parts in your track, and you can set a loop, and then when the playhead reaches it, it will start looping and it will loop forever, which is what you want. But there is a function that will let you jump to that loop if you want, and it's on the shift button. So let's go back to our view there and have a look at it. At the moment then, we are in the middle of the loop, so let's just play and get out of it. So we've now gone past the loop. I'm going to hold down the shift button and press the loop, and you'll see it'll go back to it. Now, if you haven't reached the loop, as I say, you don't need to use the shift button. Let's go back to the beginning of the track. So I'm going to trigger that loop now by pressing its loop. You'll see it lights up, but it didn't jump to it. It just reached it and looped nicely and in a well-behaved manner when it got there. So I could set more than one, of course. So let's just set another loop a little bit further on. This time we'll set a shorter loop. I'm just going to set the loop controls to something shorter. Let's set one here. And I'm going to set this one on this loop control here. And now I can jump back to either of them. So let's jump back to our first one. Again, I'm going to hold down shift and press it. Now on the software, the loops are shown on this little button here, and you get a list of them that you can scroll through like this. So you can see I've filled up 2 of my loop slots there, and there's the empty ones underneath. Now you can't delete loops by holding down shift and pressing the loop. It doesn't work that way because I've just shown you what happens if you hold down shift and press the loop. So to delete it, you need to go into the software and click the little X by the loop. Doing that will get rid of it here. I'll click it on the software now, and there we go, it's disappeared on there. And that's both of them taken away from here. So remember earlier when we looked at slip mode and I was scratching and the track was carrying on afterwards as if I hadn't messed around with it at all? There's a loop version of that, but you don't have to worry about using slip mode and finding your loops and combining controls or any of that. It's all on the pads and it's super, super easy. So on the pads, we select roll, which is the middle one of these 5 buttons, and it sounds like this. Now, if you want to have different values, watch my mouse pointer on the screen now. I'm going to click this down button here, and then we've got these values here changing to much shorter values. So these are the 8 pads, right? A 16th, an 8th, a quarter, a half, 1, 2, 4, 8 beats. And so I can go even lower to 1/32 of a beat, 1/16th, 1/8, and a quarter to give it a much more obvious effect when we're using the loop roll. Let's do that. Too much for some people down here, I would imagine, but hey, depends on your style, of course. And then of course you can go the other way as well to make them take up more room every time you press them. But ultimately, this is the way of getting that effect that you hear DJs using all the time. It goes like this. Samples are something that confuse people, which is a shame because they're so easy to use for basic stuff. So I'll just show you the basic use of the Serato sampler here. Well, firstly, you're going to have to find it in your software, because unless you can do that, none of the controls on the hardware are going to make any sense at all. Inside Serato, you're going to go and find this little air horn at the top, and you're going to click on it, and it's going to open the sampler, which is what we've now seen opening at the bottom of the screen there, just above the library. I'll close it again, and I'll open it again. Now, these are called sample slots. There's 8 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this one at the end, the 8th one, is empty. This is where you drag any samples you want to play, which tend to be short pieces of, say, vocals or drops, or could be DJ idents, whatever you want. You can go and find them in your library. You can drag them straight from your desktop. It doesn't matter. Drag them into here and they'll stay here. More than that, you've got these banks, so you can have lots and lots and lots of samples. Mine are completely empty apart from the first 7. Now, it's worth remembering that on the hardware, the samples are the same on the left and right. You know, I told you earlier, everything's independent. Well, it isn't when it comes to the samples. You've got exactly the same samples in exactly the same slots on both sides, so just bear that in mind. And that means that the 8 samples that you can see on the screen there correspond to the 8 buttons here. So going from left to right on the screen, this is the very first sample on the screen, this is the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the empty one. So you drag a sound onto one of these and you play it by pressing the sample button. The light flashes to say it's being played, and when it's finished, it stops flashing. If you want to stop the sample playing before it gets to the end, so some of these are quite long. This is quite a long one here. You hold down Shift and press it, and it'll just stop it. But here's another little tip. If you click on the screen, this little button here or this button here, it will change the way the sample behaves. This one here will loop it, but this one here will make it so that when you take your finger off the button, it stops playing instantly. Let's just trigger that to show you what I mean. So I'm going to press that one again now. You can see it's only playing for as long as my hand's on the button. Now, there's so much more, as I say, you can do with samples. So you can set them so that they loop. You can have them synced up with other stuff. You can have cue points on your samples. You could really build whole tracks and remix things and do all kinds of stuff with the samples, which is way, way, way beyond this. But that is how to get your basic DJ drops into it. Again, they're remembered. So every time you press the sampler button, when you load up your software and plug your unit in, all your favorite samples will be there. Something that too few people use. You should have a go at it. And then finally, across the top row here is the stems pad mode. So in the stems pad mode, the top 4 pads control the 4 stems that are available in Serato: vocals, melody, bass, and drums. And the bottom 4 are effects, which I'm going to show you. So you can select in the software a view which shows you all of this. So again, in the same area we've been, I'm going to go to this second button down out of these 4 here. Click on it, and you can see now we've got vocal, melody, bass, and drums. They correspond to the 4 stems controls here on the top row. And the ones underneath that say on the software screen, vocal echo, instrumental breaker, and drums echo, work with these, which I'm about to show you the lot of. So this is a really nice, easy way of getting some quite powerful control over the stems. Let's have a listen. So this is a vocal loop where it's just got all the drums and the bass and some melodies and stuff all going on there, so I can show you each individual one. So if I turn the vocal off, we'll have an instrumental. Notice that it's turned off on the screen as well. Now I can turn off the melodies too. And I can turn off the bass line. I can actually turn them all off, leaving us absolutely nothing. So there's all the stems. Now these are ways of turning them off that sound a bit better basically. So let's have a listen to them one by one. We're going to start off with the vocal echo. Now if that sounded familiar, it's because we did it earlier on the Acapella and instrumental. We are accessing the same controls here, just in slightly different ways. So let's turn that one back on and try the next one, which is called the instrument echo. And again, we've heard this before. Next one is the instrumental breaker for a vinyl effect on the instruments. And the final one is a drums echo. A nice thing about Serato is that all Serato controllers, even the very basic ones, have what I just showed you. But your controller has got so much more. We've already looked at the way you can use the EQs. We've looked at the way you've got really quick access to instruments and acapellas and a couple of those effects. And we've got more to come, which are going to come up later. However, we're nowhere near finished with the pads because each one of those buttons, it might not be marked on the button, but they have other pad functions underneath. So let's have a look at those. Now, the first one requires the pitch and time expansion pack that came with your Rane One MkII from Serato. When you get that coupon, follow the instructions on it, and what you want to see in your Serato software is on the expansion packs tab, pitch and time DJ switched on. Without that, this is not going to work. So once you have done that, you can mess around with the pitch play setting, and it's a good one because it allows you to get creative with sounds that you like in tracks. So I'm going to go to the breakdown of this track where there's just a vocal on its own, and I'm going to select a couple of words from the vocal to demo this with. So we're in the breakdown now. Right, that's the word I. I'll put it on a hot cue. There's another word. That'll do, a couple of notes there. So I've got two hot cues set, right? Now I'm going to double tap on hot cue, and that brings up this pitch play setting. In the pitch play setting, if I hold down shift, it will let me choose a hot cue that I want to do what I'm about to demonstrate on. You'll see my first one is lit brightly, my second one isn't. If I press that one, this one's now lit brightly, this one is lit dimly. That means I'm going to do it on the second one. So it's up to you what you choose. Any of the hot cues you have set, you can choose to do this with. But the first thing you're going to want to do on switching to this mode is hold down shift and choose a hot cue. So I'll leave it on the second one for now. Right, so because we selected the second hot cue, on this one, it's going to play from the second hot cue again. That's how we do it. And it's going to play it as if it was just being played normally. But if I go like this, it's going up a semitone a time. And here it's going down. So you can use this to mess around and play new riffs on any part of your track. So again, if I wanted to do it on the first one, I can go like that, and now it's on the first one. And I've got other ways of moving the notes because at the moment we're set here and we're going to go. So this note's bang in the middle. If I press the parameter button, up one, so now this note's moved bottom left, and now everything's going to be above. So I'm getting higher because this note's now at the bottom. And if you imagine the note's going up from the bottom like this, so that means I can go in the other direction and move it to the top. So now all the notes are going to go lower because the real note is right up here at the top right. There's the real note, and I can go down. This is a way of, again, inventing new riffs and playing around with what's already on your tracks. It's nice. Do make sure you have that pitch and time expansion pack enabled though. Okay, moving on. So double tapping the saved loop button gives you a different way of accessing the loops. We already know how to access loops using these controls. So I use these to double or halve the length of the loop. And actually, if you look on the software screen, you can see that's happening. I'm now set to a 4-beat loop. Turn that on, and on the waveform, you can see a 4-beat loop has been put on there, right? This is all as we learned. There's just another way of accessing it by double tapping this. If I double tap this, you'll see that this button's flashing, and that's because this button corresponds to a 4-beat loop. Look at the software, you'll see that the 4 loop values on the bottom row there are these 4 values here. So I can move to a 2-beat loop or a 1-beat loop or an 8-beat loop here or a quarter. So this is a way of simply triggering loops that you would otherwise have to access by using these buttons along with that button. They're on one touch. And you can change the starting loop value down at the bottom here to something different by pressing the parameter button all the way down. So press it all the way down there. So it's now at 1/32 all the way up to 4 beats, or I could move this 4 beats up to 32 beats, but that means that the one at the bottom here is only a quarter. Again, just different ways of accessing what you can do here. The difference between this and the loop roll is that this will loop it and it will just carry on playing from where you started looping it. It won't do any of that jumping to where it would have been stuff that you get with the loop roll. Speaking of roll, this has got stems baked in all the way through, right? And there's a stems roll function. This one's really cool. It's on that roll button. You double tap it to get to this view here, which has got different colored lights on the top and bottom. The top ones choose which stem the bottom ones are going to affect. This is easier to show you than to explain. Let's just hit play. All the stems are on. These are corresponding to the stems that we know: vocals, melody, bass and drums. They're all on, so this is what it would sound like. It's exactly the same as the roll above. We've only got 4 to play with, but it's exactly the same as the roll above. But that's because we've got all the stems turned on. If I only turn on, say, the vocal, which is this one, if I turn all the others off, then everything I do here will only affect the vocal. Pretty cool, eh? If I want the whole track to play apart from the drums, so I'll now let the rest of the track play by not turning those on and put this effect only on the drums. Now I can mash up the rhythm while the rest of the track carries on playing. And any other combination that you want. Have you ever been at a concert where there's a song they're about to play and it's a duet with someone famous, and whoever's on the stage is like, I'm sorry, they can't be here today to perform this with me. And so they end up doing it on their own, right? You know, those circumstances? Well, this is one of those on this video, because unfortunately our scratch tutor, DJ Jazzy Jeff, cannot be with me today to demonstrate this feature for you. So I'm afraid non-scratch DJ Phil is going to have to do it. But hey, if you're a scratch DJ, I'll show you what you need to know. Just don't expect the heroics. Right, so this is a function for scratch DJs. This is a function that lets you load very quickly any track that you want to play and scratch with it, and then get it off the deck as quickly as you loaded it, ready to carry on where you were. It's a very powerful way of having all your favorite scratch sounds, because you're going to have up to 32 of these prepared already, all at a finger's touch, so that you can quickly just throw them on the decks when you want to scratch and get them off again, ready to carry on mixing. So I'll show you how to set it up, and I'll just give you a very rough example of how you would use it. So to start with, we need to find the sounds that we want to scratch with in order for me to demonstrate. So I'm just going to go and grab a song from this collection here. I'm going to press the small record with a hand on it next to the sample air horn that we saw earlier, which will open the scratch sample area. And we're going to prepare a track. So let's go grab this one here onto this deck here. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a sound in this track. In fact, there seems to already be a cue point set. Let's see what that cue point sounds like. Oh, cool. That's a good sound for scratching. Cool, I like that. All right, there's already a cue point set there. That's good. What I'm going to do now is drag the whole track down onto the scratch sample slot number 1. Now, by doing that, I've now armed one of the buttons I'm about to show you. So on the controller, I'm going to double tap this time the sampler button, and you can see that one of these 8 slots here is lit. Now I can use the parameter button to move through scratch banks A, B, C and D. You can see they're all empty, just like when I showed you with the sampler. But the first one, this one here, has got something loaded on it. So this is now armed. Now what I need to do as well is use this drop down here to select the cue point that I want to scratch from when I load it. That's now properly armed. And what I'm telling this slot here now is, when I do what I'm about to demonstrate, I want you to load the track ready for me to scratch at that point, which, as you just saw, is that quite big chunky scratch sound there, right? So here's how it works. Imagine I am DJing. So again, I'm just going to do this so you can see what I'm doing, put the software on. Imagine I'm DJing and I've got this track here ready to go on this deck here, right? This is the one I want to DJ with next. And the one underneath is the one I'm currently playing, right? So this is the mix I've got lined up, right? I'm DJing normally, right? With this setup here. I'm ready to start this track, but then I think, you know what? I've got a bit of time left on the current track. I'd quite like to scratch. I'd quite like to grab one of my favorite scratch sounds and do some scratching. Well, I will double tap into the scratch bank mode here by double tapping on sampler, and all the tracks I've lined up are ready. We've only lined up one. So by tapping this button, it will load this track onto this deck here, onto deck number 1, ready for me to scratch at the exact place I set cue point number 1. So watch. So now I can scratch away, do my thing. When I'm done, I hold down Shift and I press the button again, and it will load up the track I did have loaded, ready to go. So I'm ready to beat mix whenever I want without any delay. And there we go. I perform my beat mix as if I hadn't loaded that scratch sample in the first place. It's an insanely fast way to get your scratch samples from tracks that you like loaded onto the deck momentarily, and you're just a shift and a tap away from going back to however you had the deck set before. And the final one is stems effects. So this is on the stems button, unsurprisingly, but we have to press it twice to get to this view here. Now this view here, unlike the stems mode where this will literally turn stems on and off, right? We've seen this. If we double tap on it, these will turn the stems on and off, but you'll still hear the whole track because this mode is all about the effects, which are mapped to these 4 here. So just like we looked at the stems roll, this is effectively the same deal, but instead of rolling, we use effects. The effects we've got across the bottom here are these. Triggered and turned off again. So that's an echo out. And a delay on the final one there. You can change these so that you've got them slightly longer or shorter cycles by pressing parameter. So for instance, the echo out is currently set to half beat echo. You can have it set to a longer echo. The same parameter change works on the others as well. Okay, at the moment we've just seen some single button effects, but remember, these will turn off or on the different stems. So if we only want it to affect the vocals, you've seen this before, we'll turn off everything other than the vocals and then try them again. Or as I showed in the last demo, we might want to do it on just the drums. These are the ones that I'd probably use the most. So now because only the drum one is lit, this is only going to affect the drums. And any other combinations that you want as well. So these here are the final one that's programmed in that you can just access by either single or double tapping on any of these. There is one more. If you hold down Shift and press Hotkey, this set of pads here now can be MIDI mapped in the software to any functions that you like on Serato. And if you're into the idea of MIDI mapping, do check out our Serato Made Easy course, where we talk about how to MIDI map controls to do things that maybe your controller can't do, or you want them somewhere else. This is a great somewhere else to put them, because you're just a shift and a tap of the hotkey away to 8 buttons that you can use for anything you want. They're the primary pads then. But this unit's got more than the primary pads, as we know. It's also got the secondary pads at the top right. So let's go and look at what they do. Essentially, the secondary pads at the top, these 4 buttons here, give you a duplication of something you could have done down here, but pushing it up to here means that you don't have to switch into a mode to use it down here at all. And so, hey, more buttons is good, right? It comes out of the box when you turn the unit on, set to the first 4 hotkeys. Obviously, there's only 4 buttons, so it's not going to give you full control. The first 4 hotkeys are duplicated. You can see that from the colors, right? So I can trigger the same hotkeys at the top that I could do at the bottom on the track. Now I can also switch to any of the others. So the sample bank is on the second one. By holding down mode and pressing sample bank, this would then load the track onto the deck to scratch with that we looked at when we looked at sample bank. I can go to the sampler itself again. This is the sampler. So these are the samples that we had loaded earlier. Now stems, exactly what you would think. This is just giving you control over the 4 stems. So again, I've got them on the screen at the moment. Vocal on off. If you look at the top left of the screen, melody on off, bass on off, and drums on off. Moving down then to the bottom, this is probably the most useful one, in my opinion, is Beatjump. Now Beatjump can be done on the pads. We haven't actually looked at Beatjump yet. And the reason we haven't looked at it yet is that I didn't trigger it in the software to make it easier to show you what's going on down here. You don't actually need to switch on the Beatjump controls in the software for it to work. But let me show you where you would do that, just to keep it really simple when you're using it. You click the little cog at the top here and you turn on Beatjump here. Show Beatjump controls. And what that does for you is split this area here so that we now have a different set of numbers down here, which are for Beatjump. And so I'll explain to you what Beatjump is now. And the easiest way to explain it is to use these controls here, because this is all you need. I'm going to hold down mode and press this button twice. I'm now in Beatjump mode. So Beatjump mode has these different colored buttons. This button goes back in the track. This button goes forward in the track. And these 2 buttons half and double the number of beats that you're going to go back and forward by. Sounds a bit difficult, doesn't it? But look in the middle of the screen now. You will see that as I go down, I'm halving every time the Beatjump value. I'm going to go back up to something kind of meaningful. So you can go all the way up to 32. I'm going to go to 16 beats, 4 bars of music. It's now set to 16 beats. So when I press that or that, it will jump forward or back by 16 beats, which is clear when we play a track and do it. Continue to going back now. In the end, I'll get to the beginning of the track. There we go. And I can go forward. But notice it stays on the beat. In other words, it keeps everything in time. This is a really nice way of moving around in your tracks. That's why I think it's a good idea to just have it set permanently up there. So you've got a really quick way of moving backwards and forwards while staying on the beat. Very useful for doubling the length of breakdowns, or jumping straight to the drop, or quickly cycling through a track you don't want to play to get to the end bit where you can mix out all kinds of things. Beatjump's an insanely useful feature, and on its own, that makes these buttons worth having. Okay, let's move on to the next one, stem roll. So again, we double tap on here to get to our stem roll, and you know all about stem roll because we've already looked at it, but this will allow you to trigger the stem roll effects depending upon how they're set on the main pads down here. So stem roll is double tap on here, right? So this is currently set, so we've only got the drums being affected by the stem roll effects. You can leave that there forever. If you only ever want to use stem rolls on the drums, you leave that there forever, and then every time you switch to stem roll up here, you can affect the drums with the 4 different stem roll options. Then we've got stem effects. Again, we looked at them just a minute ago, didn't we? Again, because I've got those set on the stem roll effects down here to adjust the drums, these are affecting just the drums, and you can see that one's turned on there. It's also turned on here. Think of these as just duplicating the essential functions of stuff that goes on down here. And the final one up here at the top is auto loop. Which you can see the loops going on in the waveform there, same as we looked at earlier. Well done for getting this far. We've got only the menu to look through now, and you've pretty much got everything nailed. The menu's got some pretty esoteric settings in, but hey, it's worth knowing everything this can do. There'll be something in there that one day you're going to want to know what it is. And actually there is something I've saved that'll give us a bit of fun here towards the end, and that's the fader effects, and you'll see why in a second because I'm going to show you how you turn those on and off. Right, let's get looking then in the menu. Right, so to get started, you need to get the menu up on the screen here. To get the menu on the screen, you hold down Shift and you press this button here. That dials us into all the things we're about to look at, which are things you can change on the unit directly from it that are completely independent of the software. The first one then is Acapella Instrumental Effects, and your choices here are Shift or Primary. What does this mean? This is telling us that on these buttons here, where we can either have an acapella or an instrumental, we can also have, as we've seen, stems effects. So in other words, when you press acapella, it does something cool on the instrumental to get rid of it. When you press instrumental, it does something cool to get rid of the acapella. The way you trigger them, because they're written underneath, is by holding down the Shift button. If you want to always have that effect when you switch to an acapella or an instrumental, you never want to have the straight switch, then that button there lets you switch so that you don't have to press Shift to do it, and then the other one jumps to the Shift function. So if you do still want to just quickly cut to an acapella, when you set it so stems effects are the main function of the button or the primary function, then that is the way you do it, and you're just going to use the Shift for the other one. Silent cue is something which is only for you if you're a scratch DJ and you know what it is. If you don't know what it is, it doesn't matter, but this is going to show you where to turn it on and off. So currently swap sensor is on yes, and what that means is that these buttons here, which are normally the sensor buttons, are now set to silent cue. They've actually got silent cue written on the top as an option, and that's where you switch that option. So as I say, if you're not a scratch DJ, this is of no interest to you at all, I would imagine. But let me show you what it does anyway. It basically mutes the track until you press a cue point. So track is muted. Pressing a cue point brings it back. DJs often had a cue point set right at the end of their track in the silence, so they could quickly turn the track off in order to bring it back in and scratch it using digital systems before someone invented this button here to do it for them. Well, that's where it is. And if it's not for you, again, you just turn it off there, and then that will become a sensor button again. Right, crossfader. This again is scratch stuff. So here we can decide how much the cut in on the left and right takes. In other words, how much you need to move the crossfader in order for the music to come in on the left and right hand, full reach of the crossfader. Leave it where it is if you don't know what to do there, because honestly, you need to be a pretty good scratch DJ to tell a difference. Fader effects are fun. This turns them on and off. So if you want to use the fader effects, I'm about to show you what they are. Saved a little Easter egg here till the end. Make sure that is turned on. So with that turned on then, we can trigger effects here that are different, as we know, to the ones they've got, echo, recycle, scale, and all this. We can change them. But when we are changing them, there are some that we didn't actually explicitly look at, and they're the fader effects. So I'm going to go and find one of them now. You'll find the FDR at the beginning. There we go, FDR, filter, pitch, ring, roll, so on, tone. Let's just set FDR roll instead of echo. So fader roll now, on this button here, it will let me use my fader to instigate a drum roll in the track, which can be quite cool. And all the other ones as well I've just shown you, they operate in exactly the same way with a different effect. So after this, go and have a play with them yourself to discover the other ones. I'll show you the fader roll now though. So again, as always, we turn it on and off here. It's worth understanding the workflow though. As soon as you turn it on here, this is now set to work with the fader roll. It will no longer be a volume control. It won't do anything. However, in order to actually trigger the effect, you need to turn it on here. And then this will do the fader thing. So turning that on will stop this being a volume fader, and then pressing this on will turn this into a live fader for the roll. If you're going like this and you can't get any reaction, it's not turning your track down, you've probably got a fader effect triggered but not turned on. Right, let me show you. Let's play a track. So at the moment the volume control is doing what you would imagine. If I turn this on, you can see my volume control is not doing anything because it's set to fader effect. And then in order to actually trigger the fader effect, I need to turn this on as well. It's pretty cool. Main meter, will turn this meter at the top here to always showing the sum of all the outputs before you've actually adjusted the main volume control or after you've adjusted the main volume control. And depending on how you have your booth monitors and your other things plugged in around the back, that might be more useful to you in one setting or the other. If not, just leave it where it is. Microphone, loads of settings here. You can do the choice of effect, echo or reverb. So you choose the one that's best for you. You can choose the depth of the effect. You can choose the echo amount, feedback amount. You can choose the size of the reverb. You can choose, I'm not sure what that one is actually, but there's another reverb effect there. Talkover then, there's loads of talkover changes here. Talkover engaged decides whether the talkover is turned on or not because there's no physical switch for this. Talkover is when the microphone goes quiet when you talk into it, by the way, if you've never come across this before. Talkover level, how much the music gets turned down when you talk into the mic, and talkover hold, how long it holds the music down for until you stop, after you stop talking. And then how long it takes to fade it back up. So all lots of controls there for that. Whether you want the microphone to go to the DJ booth or to the headphones or to the computer. Computer one is extremely useful for live streaming if you want your voice to go over your live stream that the computer is doing for you. Filter will change the filter knobs here, how they behave when you haven't got a computer plugged in and you're using a line input. So as we know, the filter is the only thing those knobs will do when you haven't got the computer plugged in, and you get the resonance control here, so you can decide how that sounds, and you can go all the way up to 10, which will sound very resonant and very musical, and the lower you go, the more it'll sound just like a EQ. Firmware, this is the boring stuff at the end, so you can check here all the firmware. You've got the DSP, the controller, the motor, the mag fader. It will tell you the firmware number. You can see if you need to update it, and you can reset the effects should you have completely messed up the effects by playing around with them and doing all kinds of things and you want to get back to how they were. Do that there, and for whatever reason, if you want to factory reset the whole unit, that's where you do that. Now, the Rane One MkII, as you've just seen, is an awesome unit, and I've given you a comprehensive video tutorial on everything it does. But as I said at the beginning, that's not the full picture. If you're already a seasoned DJ, you can turn off now. You've got everything you need to either decide whether this is for you or to quickly get started with it if you've ordered it or if yours has just arrived. But if not, the best way to learn how to DJ is to quickly get up to speed in those 5 areas I mentioned earlier. That's what we teach in this book. What I've just given you lives in the first area, the tech, the gear, alongside things like how wider DJ gear plugs together, how to gain stage for great sound, and lots of that other essential geeky stuff. But there's also music. You need to know how to assemble and organize and work a music collection so you've always got the right track to play next, right? Then of course there's mixing, what you do with the music on the gear in order to get the right sound coming out of the speakers and to hopefully keep your dance floors full and happy. But you also need to know how to perform. which is the fourth step, because doing this in public is very different to doing it in your bedroom. And finally, there's step 5, success. Now, what that means to you will be different to everyone else, but whether it's regular gigs, making music, live streaming, setting up a DJ business, or just doing all of this for fun, our teaching fantails to cover all of those things and more. It's only when you've got those 5 things, gear, music, mixing, performing, and success, that you'll be able to call yourself a DJ. So here's a secret. The big mistake most people make is getting stuck on one of them. They only learn a pile of DJ transitions because they're worried no one will take them seriously otherwise. Or they get hung up on the best gear, convincing themselves that only the latest and greatest will suddenly make them good. Or they spend years building a music collection, worried that if they've got the same music as everyone else, they'll never stand out. But the truth is, most DJ gear is just fine. You don't need much music to play a DJ gig. And there's a handful of mix techniques that will get you through any situation. Plus, the best way to actually learn how to perform is to do it. It's only at that point that you can decide where you want to go next. In other words, what success means to you. You need that momentum, because without it, you're going to come unstuck before you've even given it a chance. Now, I've taught this to thousands of DJs, and I want you to have a free copy of the book where I'll help you get started in all those areas. You can get this by joining Digital DJ Tips for free. All the links are underneath. And when you're ready, I'd be thrilled to have you as a student on our complete DJ course, where I'll share with you everything you need to know to become a great DJ across all of those 5 areas. It works for all DJ gear, including this wonderful unit, and it's underneath in the links as well. I'll see you there then. In the meantime, get good, get out there and make the moments. Bye-bye for now.